So, the recent Resident Evil 8 trailer dropped, and it's kind of has made its rounds through the internet and stuff like that. So, a lot of people have been praising it for the, how cool it looks and the different speculations I've been watching it on from, guys like, Sphere Hunter from, no, excuse me, from Sphere Hunter to, the Road Team, Ink Ribbon. A lot of people are excited for the next Resident Evil game, and I'm honestly not that excited myself. And you know what? From the looks of it, they're going to try to pander to the Resident Evil 4 crowd, and I'm going to just say it up front, I'm not that excited for the next Resident Evil game. Like, this is not my excitement for Resident Evil 2 or 3, because honestly, like, when I was playing Resident Evil 3 and 2, I was very excited. I was very excited to play those games. And with this recent with this recent next installment of the Resident Evil franchise with Resident Evil 8, I'm not particularly that happy with this. And considering they're going to tread on the same territory of, it's just, first person view. We're going to play as Ethan Winters, which honestly I think he's one of the most boring Resident Evil characters out there. And granted, you can say that the other characters were kind of worse too, but at least they had some kind of personality. I mean, Ethan Winters is just kind of like a blank slate. And honestly, I know people are like, well, it helps emotionally drive the character. And it's like, no, I don't give a shit. Like, it's the reason why we loved, Chris, Jill, Leon, Claire, Barry, and even, like, the side characters, like Barry and Rebecca, is the fact that, like, or, Sherry for that matter, they had personality, and we actually cared if they survived or not, because they were kind of likable protagonists, Well, there's also likable antagonists, but they were likable protagonists, depending on which way you were going with that, so, with this recent, trailer drop of everything like that, I'm kind of also just kind of like want to just say I'm done with the like Resident Evil like franchise, but I'm really not, because I am going to be playing 8. I'm not that excited for Resident Evil Village. I wish this was a spin-off though. Like, okay, so you're putting the number in there, but you're not calling it 8. So it's like, is this a sequel or is this like a remake? Is this like a sequel or a spin-off? And honestly, I just don't care, because, like, from the looks of it, I have to agree with, like, the only guy that's been calling this out and roasting it is Scorpion, which, honestly, he's kind of the only one that's just, rightfully bashing it. Like, he made 2 videos about this, which are roasting Resident Evil, which is his most recent one, and, Resident Evil 8 looks like beautiful trash, and he's absolutely right. It looks like beautiful trash. It looks beautiful, don't get me wrong. The game itself looks amazing, but I just don't feel attached to it. You know what I mean? Like, I was excited for Resident Evil 2's remake. I was excited for Resident Evil 3's remake, despite everything about it. Hell, even I was excited for Daymare, which, honestly, that's not a Resident Evil property, but it was the guys who kind of brought Resident Evil 2 remake into light. So if you haven't played Daymare, go ahead and play it. I don't care how bad it is. I'm going to still play it anyhow. I just haven't gotten around to buying it, and I've bought in other games too, so yeah. So Resident Evil 8, I'm kind of not excited. And again, Scorpion, if you haven't seen those videos, I'm going to put a link down below to them so you can watch them and tell me what you think. But honestly, I'm not that excited either. Like, I'm granted, I watched, like, the other, like, Resident Evil YouTube channels talking about this, like, Sphere Hunter and, the Row Team, Residents of Evil, and Ink Ribbon. I haven't watched enough of him, but, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, none of them are, like, they're too excited because, like, granted, I understand why they're excited, because Resident Evil is finally back to being a horror game, to actually being scary, but I just don't see it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's scary, but at what cost? And again, like, Scorpion pointed this out, score as in score and then the letters PN, so if you're wondering about that. Not Scorpion as the Mortal Kombat character or the insect or the arachnid. but it doesn't appeal to me. You know what I mean? I feel, excuse me for that burp. It doesn't strike me as being like something engaging for me. Like, oh, you're doing the same thing again. You're doing first-person horror. It's set in a village in somewhere in eastern Romania. It has werewolves, witches. It has the Return of the Merchant for some apparent reason. It has, witches. It has the vampires. And I'm just like, okay, there's going to be an explanation behind it for all this, like, supernatural stuff. It'd probably be the virus or some kind of, like, next mutation of a virus of some sort, or, like, a mold or some, like, something on that lines. I don't know for sure, but honestly, it's, again, I'm not too engaged. And again, they brought back Chris Redfield, and everybody's, like, shouting about how, like, oh, they're going to make him the bad guy, which I find highly, I doubt that. There's probably some reason why he's doing this, and probably because it's something that has to do with Mia being a double agent, or Chris being under the control of the three vampire ladies you saw in the trailer, who are the real villains of that game. It's probably going to be Alex Wesker or something like that, which I have to agree with Scorpion and on this one again. They always bring back, the Wesker family into that, which honestly they are kind of like, they're like the Brando family from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. They're just going to keep coming back and harass the Joestar family. I don't know. But honestly, I am not that excited, and again, it just doesn't appeal to me. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we're just going to, do this witches and supernatural and folklore, and it's like, I stop. Just stop. It looks pretty, yes, it looks pretty, and I bet the game is going to be great, but it's not. But it's not going to be it's not going to be that great. You know what I mean? It's like, you're just going to do the same thing. It's like, oh, you're going to be chased by like an unkillable enemy. You can't. You shoot in the head a couple of times, and it just drops, and you get 30 seconds of like relief. That was my biggest issue with Resident Evil, with Resident Evil 7, 2 remake, and 3 remake. Well, mostly like 2's remake, but 3's remake, I'm gonna say this up front. They kind of paced out 3's Nemesis appearance in that game. Like, yes, he appeared, but he also like the game lets you explore the areas too. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, I am excited for Resident Evil 2's remake. Excuse me, what am I saying? Oh my god. I am excited for what they're going to do with this, but I'm not that excited. You know what I mean? I'll wait until, like, gameplay footage comes out of it. I'll wait until more details are dropped about this, because I'm not going to just hand over my money to Capcom. And it feels like and again, he's absolutely right. It feels like Scorpion is kind of right. They're just kind of throwing spooky elements into it and slapping the Resident Evil name onto it. It's like, oh, it has witches, it has werewolves, and it has, vampires. But, oh, don't worry, it will be explained with a virus of some sort. But it's like, I don't care, because, like, with Resident Evil 7, I felt like there was a lot of, like, lackluster things into it. Like, a lot. Like, and I'm not the only one who talked about it. Lexi, Markiplier's, like, editor, he made a video about this, talking about, like, the lack of enemies in that game. It's like, where is, like, the zombies or the zombie dog? Like, you have this new monster, like Evelyn, who's, like, mold, basically, which is, like, alright, I guess that's scary, but not that intimidating. It's like, okay, it's mold. So, like, okay, viruses. We had viruses, nothing but viruses. And then now you have a super mold. Alright, I'll talk about Resident Evil 7 in another video down the road, but this, to me, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with this game, and honestly, I'm just not that excited to play another clone of Amnesia or Outlast, or the multiple abundance of first-person, chase-me-around horror games, which people are claiming to be survival horror games. I'm sorry, but if a game doesn't allow me to fucking fight back the monster, I don't want to play it. I really don't want to play it then, because it's like, this is why I'm not a big fan of Amnesia or any of those games that, like, are geared towards like Let's Players. Let's be honest about that. Like when I first saw Slender Man, I was like, the spook of it is him chasing you. It's not scary after a while. You realize it's like he just chases you. There's nothing fantastical about it. Like, oh, the lore is great, but it's like he's just a boring interdimensional character. Who cares? I don't care. Like, nice suit, by the way. But I don't know. That's the thing that kind of bugs me about this. And granted, I could be wrong about this. I could be like just an old fuddy-duddy talking about the great days when Resident Evil were good and when the PlayStation era was great and they didn't censor you and you know they didn't have their agenda, and I'm just like, and you're just probably like me. You're just an old man who's just complaining about the past. This is our generation. Well, your generation sucks. Our generation had some kick-ass things. Your generation couldn't even handle, two genders. Or in this case, you couldn't handle boobs or sexy-looking characters. That's how weak you are. All right, enough about the SJW crowd. But anyhow, again, I'm just not that excited because if they're gonna do the same shit they did in 7, I'm not that happy with that. And again, why not just go back to basics with the Resident Evil, like fixed camera angles? It's like, well, it's, it would be hard for like new players to get, like, who cares? It's like, I'm so tired of hearing about the new players. It's like, it's so hard for them. It's the same thing with Crash Bandicoot. That damn dog. Crash Bandicoot, you know what I mean? Like, I was watching like somebody do a Let's Play of the demo, and like they have a circle underneath Crash to see where you're gonna be jumping, and I'm just like, wow, we are a weak culture. We can't even handle that. I don't care. I'm just gonna keep talking anyways. Anyhow, I'm just so I'm cautious about this. I mean, like, and then you got Chris Redfield being a bad guy in that, and then we're gonna follow the adventures of Ethan Winter, the most boring protagonist in any Resident Evil game. I know people out there are gonna point out somebody else, but it's just like, I'm sorry, but Ethan Winters is a boring character. I never liked his character in Resident Evil 7, and I'm going to be honest with you, there were two, like, Joe Baker and Chris Redfield were more interesting characters. And the fact that, like, what was more interesting was the plot with, again, I'll talk about Resident Evil 7 in another video, but then again, I am grateful for Capcom bringing back horror, but at what cost? It seems like, and then again, it seems like they're going to pull off a Madden thing. Like, you know what I mean? And this is what happens when you have no more competitors against Resident, like a game series like this. This is why you needed Silent Hill to be around, to basically challenge, Resident Evil. To challenge them, it's like, oh, you're going to do first person, we're going to go back to third person. Which, honestly, if anything, I wish, like, even 2 and 3, I wish 7, 2, and 3 would have just gone with, like, just stuck with Resident Evil 4's camera, that fixed camera angle. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's over the shoulder, it's more like an action game. Well, you still are limited with view, and the only view you see is, like, right in front of you. If you took away, like, looking around the angles and stuff like that, it still plays out like a horror game. Like, granted, you're still stopping to aim, you're not moving backwards. That was my biggest issue with, like, Resident Evil 2, by the way. The whole, the character could move freely, and there was no, like, fixed, camera behind the character. Like, it wasn't, like, stationary behind him, which, honestly, I wish they would have just fixed that. Like, I hate that. That's the only thing I hate about Resident Evil 2 and 3's remake. It's just the camera should have just been, like, fixed right behind you at all times. I would have been okay with that. So, with that being said, I'm not that excited. Like, again, I'm kind of cautious about Resident Evil 8. It could be a great game, but honestly, I'm just kind of, like, done with the first-person survival horror games. We have enough of those, and it's been a saturated market. So with that being said, I would recommend watching Scorpion's video on Resident Evil 8, and also watch the Road Team's video, Sphere Hunter's video, and Ink Ribbon's video, and kind of get like your analysis on it. Because again, I've watched the Road Team talk about this and talk about the lore and stuff like that, what's going on in the game, and it's very interesting. But I'm also kind of cautious. With that even being said, I'm still cautious about it. So, without further ado, that's all I have to say about that. So, tell me what you think. Are you gonna play Resident Evil 8 despite what people are saying, or are you just kind of fed up with the first-person survival horror games, copying off of Amnesia and Outlast and Slenderman and all that crap? So, like, comment, and subscribe. Like, let me say that generic crap, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, love you, bye-bye, and remember, stay frosty.